This is Big Man Tyrone, and you're about to watch the MtG Cabal cast with your hosts, Woad, Thirsty, and Reptar. Sub to us on all your podcast networks at MtG Cabal Cast and YouTube.
Hi everybody, welcome back to our interview with Zieva, owner of Wandering Wolf Games and Toys up here in Vermont. I really encourage you to go back and listen to part 1 if you haven't, because we cover a lot of ground about what it's like to open your own business from the start and be essentially sole proprietor, i.e. one employee only, and how that works across multiple categories. And it's primo for people who want to work in the space and want to make this their job, not just a side gig. In the previous episode, we talked a little bit about your categories being Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and now Dragon Ball Super.
Yep.
And how they each have their own tournament series. They're all, going at once. When you're looking for cards, let's say, we'll do this in 2 steps. The first will be about individual cards when you're searching marketplaces. The other will be about what keys you in for collections.
Gotcha.
And then across all categories, please.
Okay.
So when you're looking at individual cards to pick up, what kind of cards do you generally target? So we can start with Magic, because that's the one you and I have both been interacting with the longest.
Sounds good. Yeah, for Magic, I generally look for cards that I see, have usually a few printings, not too many reprints, and also I think either are seeing an uptick in popularity or could. When Pioneer was announced, the one I zeroed in on was Searing Blood, which hasn't paid off yet, but I think the reasoning behind it was sound.
Okay.
That it's going to be a card the red deck just wants to play. Period.
I agree. A lot of conversation I've been having in regards to the red deck and Pioneer is that until the format is settled enough that you've decided that your base level 0 deck is either going to be red aggro or green aggro, you won't have a standardized version of the red deck in particular. If the red deck has to punch up and deal with things like Steel Leaf Champion out of the green deck, then you're going to see a lot of different ways to build that deck, going a little bit bigger with Torbran and Phoenixes, or staying small and low to the ground, in which case that's where Searing Blood kind of pops. That deals...
Yeah.
That version is going to want to deal a ton of damage with those early creatures, kind of the way it does in Modern and Legacy.
Definitely.
So.
Although, now you've said Torbran and Searing, and I just started thinking about Searing Blooding a Steel Leaf Champion with Torbran in play.
Torbran
pretty funny.
Torbran is a good card, and we figure no matter which way you play the red deck, either be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, you're only going to have so many cards fighting for that 4-drop slot. So it's not if it's on Torbran, it might be one of the Phoenixes that costs 4, or maybe Chandra TOD. The 4-drop. There are a lot of very powerful options, but what comes before those cards in the curve also matters a lot. Torbran seems like the kind of card that would enjoy all the token makers in the format, because all your 1/1s become 3/1s.
Definitely.
So, interesting card to work around. So, that's from Magic. What about Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't really know enough about how the game plays at the highest levels to make picks in that regard, but one thing I look out for when I'm going through collections is just first editions of the older sets, from Legend of Blue Eyes to I want to say Phantom Darkness, but that's kind of just arbitrary. It's just LOB and on. I want to say early synchros is when you want to look for first editions.
And does that account for also Dark Magician and Dark Magician's Girl in those sets as well?
Yeah, those are usually pretty good to pull depending on which printing. Dark Magician is pretty safe. Dark Magician Girl is the one who you can usually get some value out of. Dark Magician is one printing that's has a lot of printings that are pretty worthless, actually.
Yeah. Oh, I know that. When it comes to both of those cards in particular, working anime cons, I know if it's not a first edition, it's not worth looking up.
Yeah.
I know very little about Yu-Gi-Oh, but that's it.
Gotcha.
And the Wrath of God, that starts with the letter R.
Regeki.
Regeki, yeah.
Yeah.
That card can be everything or nothing depending on whether it's being played.
Yeah, depending on where it is on the ban list.
Yes, and one of the pots as well, I think, is like that.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of those.
Mm-hmm. And so both those games have been around for a while, and Yu-Gi-Oh offers a pretty unique, for instance, case in first editions versus non. What about Pokemon?
Pokemon, same story as Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm still working on figuring out how the game operates on the higher tiers of play, but in that one, I've noticed that, I mean, I don't think this is an observation unique to me, but the WotC era sets are the ones that just are in the same ballpark as old school Magic cards, in that they just keep creeping up and hold their value. So when you're going through a collection, you're going to want to pull those out because those are going to ping buy lists, or you might find random people in your area building sets.
Yes.
Of those.
And for people who aren't in the know about Pokemon, that is, I believe, in order: base, jungle, fossil, base 2, rocket. And I don't think Gym was under WotC, the first Gym set. But
They were, yeah.
Okay.
We got all the way up to those weird e-reader sets with Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because it was the Game Boy plugin. I forgot what they
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty fun. Like, I kept the Ho-Oh and Rapidash one with the e-reader until I sold them to my old workplace. It's a fun game.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of that is also like the nostalgia hype because of Pokemon Go.
Yeah, definitely.
Did things for Pokemon when you were looking for singles in particular? Let's talk about collections yet, just singles overall. Did that become a little clearer with the nostalgia bump? Did you know, like, okay, the WotC era stuff is really what I want to move on because this is going up, 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 up? Or were you still kind of figuring things out when the nostalgia hit?
I was still figuring things out when the nostalgia hit. I had, that was around when I had tried my business for the first time, and I had picked up a collection and wound up just sitting on it for a while because my life was so at the time. And then I looked back later and it was like, oh wow, everything went up.
It's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it, but the reprint base where they brought everything from the original base up to
XY Evolutions.
Yeah, did that do anything in regards to not pumping up the old cards' value, but did any of those cards actually?
I don't think they did. Like, let me just see if I can. XY. I'm just gonna look at the TCG player price guide because I'm curious.
Okay. Because I remember when those packs first came out, people were cracking them, and I was looking at somebody's binder. I was like, wow, I remember all these cards, but with different text because everything was a Poke Power. It wasn't like a Poke Body or a type or what have you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this set is pretty garbo.
Okay. Just
yeah.
OEV all around.
Yeah, even Secret Rare Surfing Pikachu doesn't crack $1. Sad days.
Oh, but that was in the set overall? That wasn't a handout like it used to be?
Yeah, I guess it's... Well, I can't zoom in on TCG Player, but it looks like it was in the set along with Imakuni, Doduo.
Yep.
Which had this really cool ability where you throw it across the room to retreat. When this Doduo retreats, hold this card and throw it as hard as you can because Doduo is running away.
Okay.
Throw the card horizontally with a snap to get the furthest distance. And it says, like, on the bottom, this card not legal for serious games. But
okay. I like that.
It's also like the Bah Humbug magic card. You have to start singing.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So even now, you're basically just looking at the WotC era Pokemon stuff.
Yeah. There are, like, the competitive scene does drive a lot of the new prices, especially around foil commons and uncommons, and the secret rare versions of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know they started for base set. You either had holo rares or non-holo rares, and they only came in that edition. So, or that style. So you could only get Charizard as a foil, Electabuzz as a non-foil. In the next set, Jungle, you could have foil or non-foil of each card, and then first edition or not first edition, like with original base set. Have you found that for the sets after base that the first edition stamp makes a lot of difference on the non-foil cards?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Like you're looking at the difference between it's just like I think it's usually like under $1 to $2 to $3 jump
Okay.
off the top of my head.
yeah,
It's like
for-
super off the hip.
Yeah, for the lower level stuff, but for
Yeah.
for a little while things were kind of muddy. Like your high end cards were playables; they weren't like notable Pokemon. You didn't have Charizard in Jungle or Fossil.
Right.
You had like
yeah.
Scyther, Wigglytuff, and Aerodactyl. They
Oh,
finished out the
Scyther.
bird cycle, so you had all the birds, which might actually hold value, and the evolutions for that point were finally finished.
I think the big bucks are in jungle are actually the evolutions now.
There you go. Yeah. So, which makes sense. And then there's the hidden card. Rocket, is it the Rocket Raichu or Dark Raichu?
Oh, yeah.
It was one over the set number. Was the first time WotC did that, I think.
That was Dark Raichu from
Mhm.
Team Rocket,
Yeah.
and like there was some error on some of them too, or something.
Oh, there were errors all over that game. There's a certain
Yeah.
Vileplume from Jungle whose weakness is fighting instead of fire. But it's like not first edition all Vileplumes. It's like first edition foil Vileplumes, but not first edition non-foil. Like it's
Yeah.
a super weird niche thing. That's kind of interesting.
Agreed.
So Super. This
Yeah.
is kind of a new game for everybody right now, and from what I've been hearing in other discords, the super market is starting to really pick up now, around the world. Like globally, it's picking up. It's no longer just casual fans of the game.
Yeah.
Have you kind of figured out a niche in regards to like specific targets for that game because it's very much based on a fandom?
Yeah, I have not yet. I have noticed like the overall card prices are fairly cheap compared to what we're used to seeing in Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh, but the the foil printings of staples, commons and uncommons tend to be the heavy hitters
Yes.
consistently, and they have these things called ultimate rares, which you can only have one per deck,
Mhm.
and they tend to be really, really, really good.
So it's like
The-
a GX, right, in Pokemon, like the same
I think
thing, or a Mega,
I think-
one or the other.
I'm not sure about for Mega. I think you can have multiple GXs though.
Maybe you can only use one GX attack in a game.
That's it. You
Okay.
can only use one GX attack per game. But these are like they tend to be in the 60 plus range, I believe. Is
Wow.
the low end for those cards. When I was busting packs for product, when I tried that, the
Mhm.
one I pulled was like 90 at the time.
Mhm.
But those cards are what I would compare to like like a Jace from Mind Sculptor.
Yeah.
Like you need it to really play competitively, but it's something that's just going to sit in the case for a while until that one person needs it for their deck.
Yeah, and that's kind of what. That's a very good explanation of what I meant when I said we're finally starting to see cards move worldwide at real prices. The majority of these cards are for fandom, so people are going to play their Yamcha deck, but a lot of the Yamcha stuff isn't going to be expensive. But
Yeah.
cards like Sensu Bean is a common, like foil
Yeah.
Sensu Beans are expensive because, like you said, they are a heavy hitter in this game. Everybody has to play Sensu Beans to some degree.
Exactly. And Sensu Bean's, I guess, most analogous to Dark Ritual plus Rampant Growth or something, right?
Yeah, it's some ridiculous card in the game. Like of the number of times I've bought singles, that was the first lesson I learned. Was if
Yeah.
there's Sensu Beans in the stack, it doesn't matter foil or not, check them because as somebody who works for Troll and Toad on the occasion, our audience is huge and they buy both foil and non-foil. But that is a
Yeah.
common that people will buy all the time, just like Dark Ritual and Rampant Growth.
It's like, I guess if I was going to pick a price point to compare it to before it got reprinted in Magnificent Collection, it'd be like Wild Slash when Pioneer was announced.
Oh yeah, immediately like a $7 card. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Like, it's kind of like Super and Transformers are really interesting to look at because they're moving from this kind of dormant casual state into competitive games both, and so the marketplaces are just starting to really burgeon up and become. The respectable is not the right word, but be.
Like, yeah, it's interesting.
Maybe respectable is the correct word. Like the early
Right.
Pokemon market was not a respectable market to begin with because Charizard was everything and nothing else was anything.
Right.
But now there's real prices being put on real cards for tournament staples, so it's becoming You know, it's an evolving marketplace,
Yeah,
and it's kind of growing into its own.
yeah. I
So,
did not know about Transformers. That's good to know.
yeah, it's mainly because how the game started. There was an announcement there would be no tournaments. The WotC would not sponsor tournaments. Then the player
Huh.
said, "Yeah, but we want to play tournaments." So WotC said, "Here is a very small amount of resources for it," and that's just snowballed out of control, so to speak, to the point where the initial view for the Magic the Gathering Judge Center was to include Keyforge and Transformers. They're the first two games that are going to be plugged into the new Judge apps.
Oh wow.
So they are becoming real. At least Transformers is in that regard because it's owned by WotC. Super is not, so that's on
Yeah.
on that company to handle.
Right. Right.
But so that's in regards to singles. Collection buying is completely different, as most people know. Sometimes you want to scour for value across the collection ahead of time, look at photos, and say, okay, this is definitely a collection I'm going to attempt to make an offer on, be it in person or online, and then kind of seal the deal. Is there anything?
Yeah.
I think
What was-
asking for what your strategy is the better question than is there anything you look for when you're looking at a collection.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Uh,
I
so,
liked. Sorry. Go ahead.
If it's different, if you don't mind, I'd like to go down the games again. Otherwise, if it's one unique strategy, then by all means we can talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just think for a second.
Sure.
That my overall strategy for buying. I like to go in as prepared as I possibly can. So if I can get a list from them beforehand, and this is across all games, I should say.
Okay.
Like that's great, especially like if they're looking to get a quote before a meetup, then I really need a list with the set details for Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Super, really, because those card games have so many of the same name,
Yes.
and there's such a huge variable that I really need that information to make an informed offer.
Mhm.
And I just like brain freeze.
No, it's fine because this is a big question and a big topic. Right?
Yeah.
I know when I collection buy, the first thing I do is because I haven't bought a collection in a while, and Facebook Marketplace had not really come up, so I was only using Craigslist.
Mhm.
And from my experience working on Craigslist, not a lot of people are apt to send you an itemized list.
Yeah.
So I was combing images ahead of time.
Images definitely help me a lot too. It can be tough depending on the quality, but those are a big thing I look at. Like, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that I try to get as much information about the collection as possible. And if it's yeah, I don't tend to pursue the ones that are like 2,000 magic cards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Those. Here's a box. Here's a photo of a box of cards.
Yeah.
Do you want to take the time to ask for more photos or an itemized list?
Yeah.
It's probably not worth your time to go on that when there are now at Facebook Marketplace so many other collections that are going to be more worth your time and upfront about what's contained within them than to try and suss out what is in that shoebox of cards, so to speak.
And when I do have that information, I like to do my just double check the heavy hitters I see, so that way I'm on top of things when they do ask, well, what's this one at, and why is it that number?
Yes.
I can give them just like right off the cuff answers as to why. So, I mean, this shouldn't come as a surprise to folks, but it's just all about being prepared and knowing your stuff so that the buyer has the seller has confidence that they're dealing with someone on the up and up who's going to take care of them.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the big things that kind of goes unsaid is that when you're making that initial offer, there is always the text of this is based on what I see and assumed conditions.
Exactly.
This way, the seller is understanding of the fact that things might change in their favor or in your favor depending on condition and what really is going on when you get there.
And I just want to emphasize what you just said about condition, because that is huge. If you're making an offer on something, you really need to have that like text in there or whatever, mention it, because that is that is a deal breaker on so many old school cards, especially for Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon.
Yep.
Especially for Yu-Gi-Oh! Because the cards are made out of, cheese. They just fall apart.
Yep. Yeah, you can keep them in anything but sleeves, and they'll just immediately start looking like alpha cut cards. Those corners are not good.
Yeah, luckily the big collection I bought that I mentioned to you came in just a weatherproof container, so it
Oh,
didn't
that's
matter if they
awesome.
weren't sleeved.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
No, I like that, and I like the highlight of knowing when to pass on a collection just based on the information presented to you.
Yeah.
You know, especially as a store owner, your time is worth a lot more money than somebody who's doing this as a side hustle and could deal with that person over days.
Also, just for anecdotal evidence as to why you don't want to do this, I did vet once
Hmm.
and got 2 photos of handwritten lists of just nothing but fallen empires and every bad card from Revised.
Solid. And at that
Like,
point, it's not
yeah,
worth either of your time.
yeah, I felt bad asking the person for a list because it was like I got what I asked for.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just such a mismanagement of time on their end.
Yeah,
So it's good to know that there's also just a kind of unique strategy that can be applied to collection and buying as a whole across all games. But in the end, it does come down to having that root knowledge of the games and prices themselves.
yeah, definitely.
So to take a step back a little bit from strategy in regards to buying and selling. So when you started up as your company, you started Wonderwolf Games and Toys. Did you have a particular goal in mind in regards to where you wanted to take the company? Did you want to open a store and actually own a brick and mortar, or did you always want to kind of be that lone wolf, so to speak?
Uh, in the beginning, the I didn't really have a goal per se, but the second time I started up, I have a more concrete plan for things.
Mm-hmm.
It's I want to utilize like uh just go out to shows, be like someone who can be like hired gun for other vendors and just show, I guess, some of the right words. Representation is what I'm trying to get at. Like, I want to be the person I wish I'd seen when I was first going to GPs, standing behind a booth,
Okay.
and like just having a trans pride flag next to my banner.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing is big for me, and also just like being able to start traveling and connecting with people who love Magic again. That's a big goal for me. So just being able to be like that lone wolf vendor who can also work for someone else when the opportunity arises, you know?
Yeah, no, it makes sense because there are a lot of names and faces in this space that you will see at Magic Fests, all over, and you recognize in short order that there are a lot of people that just work for a number of vendors for
Yeah,
a given weekend. So building up that reputation within the industry is definitely worthwhile if your end goal is not to actually own a brick and mortar. You can still work within the space, contracted however you would like, and the idea of representation from behind the vendor booth is also very interesting because nobody really kind of talks about that or thinks about it because it's just this unique thing of, well, it's just a person to person interaction. As long as somebody is happy with the personality that I have, they'll be willing to sit down and deal with me. I don't have to show representation for different things, but creating a safe space where somebody knows they could come and sit down with you and even just talk about their experience and open up about their life a little bit and know that the person talking to them is going to be able to receive that information and talk with them on that emotional level and understand what they were going through is important. I don't
yeah,
know
definitely.
how important yet, but as we move into a game and a mindset about representation and being more open about this, I can't imagine this isn't something somebody will seek at a Magic Fest.
And also, like, just the more different people integrate to Magic as a whole, the more important representation gets,
Mm-hmm.
because across different identities, it just broadens people's horizons or gives people new horizons, magic pun,
Yep.
to just like get different perspectives outside of their own.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Representation across the board and showing other humans that this is a game. We are humans. This is a game for humans. Every type of human is welcome here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is very important at all levels. There are horror stories of people walking into LGSs and walking right back out based on experience, and It doesn't matter who that person is or how they identify. This is an across the board thing.
Yeah.
Just unwelcome experiences at LGSs, and it even happens. It continues to Magic Fest with the way a lot of people talk at Magic Fest. It's still very much an LGS atmosphere carried over, but the moment people begin to realize overall that we are all here to have fun, everybody is here to enjoy themselves, and this is a place for people to gather, and as such, people should be treated equally and fairly as people.
Yeah.
You know,
And
that's what we're
representation can certainly play a role in that, but accountability is a big thing there too, as far as changing the community dynamics. I think is just holding people accountable for when they like just make other people uncomfortable because of something about that person, like who is being made uncomfortable because of some intrinsic fact about them. Like, for example, me being trans, in like just as an example. I don't know. I'm trying to say something here, but it's going off the rails.
No, it's fine. I understand what you're saying. It's just
Yeah.
people are put off by things
Yeah.
they don't understand, or don't agree with, and the less representation you have at events like this, the harder it is to,
Exactly.
to show that this is a game for everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so great seeing, like, my Twitter right now is Trans Magic Player Central. It's fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
just the view I wish I'd had, like, coming up in this game,
Mhm.
because I spent a long time playing this game and just being totally miserable,
Mhm.
and just trying to prove that I had worth by being good at the game,
Mhm.
for, like, just because I didn't see a future for myself in, like,
We
I don't know
started
where I'm
playing
going
when
with
this was very much
Yeah.
a game for privileged white males.
Yes, we did.
And we are still playing this game at a time when it is for privileged white males. But now you have so many more people coming up and playing this game that represents so many different parts of the human experience.
Exactly.
That-
Wizard says, yeah.
Yeah, it's and those are the players.
Yeah.
But it should also be from the vendor side.
Yeah.
Players coming into an event who before, like you, felt terrible about that because there was no representation, they felt there was no place, now can take solace in the fact that there are other people out there championing the cause. There are other people they can talk with about their experiences, but there's nobody on the vendor side yet that can do the same.
I do want to give a shout out to Liz Lynn, because I know she also does the vendor thing.
Okay.
I don't know her super well. I follow her on Twitter, but I do know she is also a transgal vendor like me.
Do you know what company she works for, by chance? Just I don't know off the top of my head. So
I do not.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Hopefully we can get that information out there
Yeah.
via Twitter, or maybe we'll put it in the podcast. So I think going back to the crux of this question, representation as a vendor, as a goal, is outstanding, because we're just not seeing that yet. We're not bringing that to the people. And if there are some people out there that think that, oh, how could anybody be upset about representation in the game from either side of it, there are people out there that get upset that a vendor who works a 13-hour day has to eat a Cliff Bar behind the booth and is doing so at a seat, and not interacting with another human being because they are eating their lunch. There are people that get upset about this. So to think that there are people that don't care about the trans right issue, and you don't understand how they are or why they are upset about it, remember, eating is a crime behind a booth to some people.
Oh, geez.
So-
I have not encountered that.
It only comes across outside the event when people complain about it, never on the floor. It is one of those
Okay.
things you'll read in reviews about Magic Fest now that go up on Reddit or on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
So
This person had to do this human function to continue doing their living thing.
yeah, exactly.
How rude.
Exactly. Imagine getting mad at a human for wanting to live, right?
Yeah.
And live happily, and that's what this issue is at the start and the finish, all
Yeah.
around. And so, like I said before, I think representation at Magic Fest from the vendor side of things as a goal is super admirable, and I'm glad that we're able to have somebody on the cast who's pushing for this, and I'm kind of bummed I hadn't been introduced to Liz Lynn before and know that she's doing this as well, because we would love to champion a cause like that as well. So, shout outs were due. So we'll take it back now from goals to the resale side of things. So
Oh, yeah.
open marketplaces. And when I say that, I mean eBay, Facebook, TCG Player, and they're open because the market sets the price on these cards. It's not a vendor website.
Mhm.
Do
Yeah.
these work best for you as a small vendor, or are they helping you at all in regards to pricing on the resale side of things?
They definitely do help me a lot in various ways. I haven't done too much on eBay yet, honestly. I want to do more on that since I've heard from Brap, who's an old hand at this, that some things
Oh
just
yeah.
move better on eBay,
Mm-hmm.
like the higher end things.
Yes, and it's very easy to prove to people what the market price is on high-end old school cards when you can point to eBay closed or sold listings and say, "Look, this is the price." In
Yeah,
reality, it's not what's on TCG Player for this card.
that's another function I love about eBay is just seeing what things are selling for and when they're selling for.
Mm-hmm.
When something's ambiguous about a TCG player price, like when I see the market price is different than the lowest listing,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good thing to check for sure too.
Yeah. So, are you mainly when you sell online? Are you mainly
Mm.
through TCG Player, or have you done any Facebook sales yet, either in the marketplace or just to individuals in the Greater Vermont area?
Uh, Mainly through TCG Player. I do get some traffic through my store's Facebook page,
Okay.
where I'll just like meet up with someone, they'll message me the list of stuff they want and sell to them that way.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't tried like listing in groups yet though. I just yeah, it has not crossed my mind yet, I guess.
Okay. And there are a number of groups to sell in depending on what you're doing. Sometimes it is a burden to have to be in 4 or 5 groups because, oh, I have foreign cards, so they go in this Facebook group. I have old school cards, so they go in this one. So it is time consuming and a little bit of a hassle there. And then it eventually just floods your Facebook feed when people
Yeah.
start posting their own stuff. And to bridge us to our eighth question, I have a 7.5 on this list.
Okay.
Still in regards to sales. So being a local vendor for us is a little unique right now because we don't have a lot of stores, if any, that actually have singles in their own cases. You and another vendor in the area represent outside vendors internal to a store. So you don't actually have cards in a case at a store. You actually can come in for F&Ms and events to the store we used to play at.
Mm.
And one of the malls up here also has these weekend card shows, and it's usually sports card vendors and then both you and an additional TCG vendor. Those avenues, as somebody who's doing this, buying collections and churning, that kind of stuff to buy list or Facebook, how has the physical side of things kind of worked out? Let's say over the last few months instead of a blanket from the beginning.
Yeah, okay. Well, the physical side of things, just talking about vending at F&M and the local card show, has not been that good. Uh, I don't know. I think the card show is because most of the other vendors have diversified, so they have sports memorabilia and other things, because it is a sports card show primarily.
Mhm.
But it just doesn't seem like I'm getting um, the audience I need to sell enough there.
Mm-hmm.
And just local Magic in general has felt like it's shrinking to me for a long time.
Okay.
And I've noticed that like I'll just have a lot of the same stuff week to week, and people don't really, if they didn't want it last week, they don't want it this week, kind of
Got it.
thing. So most of my prospects have been online so far, as
Okay.
far as sales go. But the in-person stuff has been great for networking. I will say that it's been
Okay.
really good for that, and also picking up new things it's been helped by that a lot.
Oh, so just having at least the physical representation there has been
Yeah,
worked out for you in some regard, which is good to know.
yeah.
Now, we've talked about the cards and cases, and as I've come up and bought stuff from you, I've asked you about how you code things. You have some of your TCG Player inventory in the case, and inventory that isn't on TCG Player in the case. How do you determine the difference between those two?
A lot of it depends on what it's selling for on TCG versus like, I guess it really It's more about like the lower value things,
Mhm.
like the $1 to $3 things that I can sell to someone in person for like $3 in handoff
Got it.
versus having to.
You'll lose your ass on fees to TCG.
Yeah, exactly. That's really the big difference. And
Okay.
also, the other big thing is damage stuff
Mm-hmm.
and like heavy play stuff. That stuff I don't list because it's just too like too risky. Yeah.
Yeah. Despite the fact that you could put a photo up on TCG Player, when somebody receives it, they might still squabble over condition regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that. Unless I know it is, and I look at it and it is pack mint, almost everything of mine that I would consider near mint goes listed as light play because it's hard to argue that the card that was listed as light play that is almost near mint is worse than light play.
That's what I try to do as well too.
It keeps things sane for me. Oh,
Yeah.
now, you're somebody who has had the ability to have some. I don't know if the right word is old school cards or some historical cards in the case. So, most recently I picked up from you was the beta, Unholy Strength,
Right. Yeah.
and you have is it beta bolts in the case and the beta Dwarven Miner.
The Alpha Bolts and
Okay.
Beta Dwarven Miner and a Beta Llanowar Elf, which actually looks pretty near mint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are those cards also listed on TCG Player, or do they fall into a different niche because they are so old and so collectible because of that?
They definitely fall into a different niche. They're kind of like just eye candy in my cases too, to draw people's eye to what I have.
Okay.
They don't really. I had them on TCG for a long, long time,
Mm-hmm.
and I did sell one of those to. It was funny to someone who I bought cards from at Troll and Toad. He bought my Elvish Archer,
Nice.
but that was it as far as the old school stuff went.
Mm-hmm.
And I had not a, I had quite a few things up there
Okay.
in that niche. Yeah.
Got it. So, follow-up question, and I'm going to split this into two. So, for the old school stuff that you have in the case, that's no longer on TCG Player, if you did want to get rid of it, would you consider listing it on Facebook over buy listing?
I would definitely try high end,
Okay.
the Facebook group.
Now, is that just to maximize, purely to maximize profit, or do you think it would just be an easier out on Facebook than a buy list and then having them deal with conditioning it?
I think it would be definitely to. Sorry.
That's right.
I think it would be more profitable to do it that way,
Mhm.
and also, not all of the cards are like Veneer Mint Llanowar Elf, where
Yeah.
I'm just like positive. It's like nice.
Mhm.
There's a lot of wiggle room that I wouldn't want to take a chance on with a buy list.
Okay.
Like getting downgraded,
That makes
because
sense.
if you get dinged down one grade, it's all of a sudden just not worth it.
Yes. It's an important thing to keep in mind when you're doing buy listing.
Yeah.
For old school stuff or high end stuff like that. Now, in regards to the other cards in your case that aren't on TCG Player, those low value things, if let's say you just got tired of that stock and you wanted to churn it,
That would be buy list city.
okay,
Yeah.
because it's just easier to buy list off those cards for anything than it would be to list on Marketplace.
Yeah, and like the time it takes to make those interactions also eats into the margins in a real way.
Oh yeah, and this is something that is harder. Like, it's the kind of thing that you would list on Marketplace as you either take all or nothing. You don't want to piece it out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, another good thing. Like I see those go up all the time. And I'm like, why not piece it out? But it's because I'm not the one who's relying on this income. I don't have to attach, my my lifestyle to my ROI on the amount of time it takes me to sort the cards, ship the cards, and stamp.
Yeah, and like just for negotiations on the cards too.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So for our eighth and craziest question, so we've talked about what you do locally, some of your goals, and you and I have talked not a little bit, but I like to talk a little more about your idea of attending shows and cons. And I know for interstate cons, we're very sparse in Vermont. There are a handful, and some of them have been jump started, so they were gone for a year or two and they're coming back. There are some over the lake in New York, but those are also kind of small. And I understand there's got to be a stepping stone before you can get to larger things. But have you thought about kind of moving up that chain at all?
I have. It's been something that I have not had the energy to do recently because of the aforementioned winter sadness,
Mm-hmm.
but it is something I really want to do since that was one part of working at Troll and Toad I really did enjoy was going to shows.
Yep.
But it is definitely on my horizon, if that makes sense. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
yeah.
And there's a difference between a show like a Magic Fest and a con like
Yes.
Anime Boston as well that
Definitely.
we've tried to impress upon people. And so I guess we could kind of split the question here. If you're going to go to a Magic Fest or a show like that's where you would want to be a hired gun. You would want to be working
Yeah,
for somebody else, right? Negotiate your
definitely.
contract, right? But what about conventions? Is that something you would want to look at to doing your own if you wanted to stay small, or would you want to be your own person at a larger event?
I think I would want to just go and do it like as Wandering Wolf Games,
Mm-hmm.
just to like have that experience under my belt, and also just get more, um, I guess, experience as a whole that would help me negotiate being hired by someone else to do the thing.
Yeah.
Because if I can go and say, hey, I've run the show myself like a bunch of times, I know what I'm doing. It'll give me more leverage in that situation when applying to work at a booth because I'll
Yes.
just have more expertise in all the minutia of how things run.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. Uh, and if looking for things yourself for conventions like that, start small and climb the chain, or would you just want to kind of stay small and local?
Uh, I'm a little bit wary about small and local because of my past experiences with a card show and just F&M.
Yep.
I feel like I'd want to the thing I vend at to start with, it needs to be something that attracts a good amount of outside people. I guess what I'm trying to say is not flea market small, but not Anime Boston big, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between the two. So when I was
Yeah.
thinking about smaller cons, I was thinking more about we have one in state called Carnage that happens every year. It's basically just a tabletop thing, and you can get a dedicated audience there. That might even be a little small to what I
Yeah,
was thinking because I don't actually know what we get there. But there used to be the Vermont Comic Con, and that
right.
ended. But something new is taking its place.
That's actually interesting that you mentioned Comic Con because I did work that show. It's uh like I think the first 3 years in one capacity or another, and I had a booth there.
Mm-hmm.
One year right after I had facial surgery,
Yep.
and I had looked like I had just gotten beat up, but I had a really good year that year. It
Yeah,
was, yeah,
because they have a dedicated gaming room, don't or didn't they?
if they did, and I
Yeah.
was in the room, so that was huge.
Yeah.
Like, if it's something like that, I would love to do it again, because I was right in there with the tabletop, and there was lots of focus on Magic. I
Mhm.
think the big deal for me, and that's what I've been trying to get at, but haven't been able to say, is the con needs to have a lot of room for gaming, and that needs
Yes.
to be a big draw.
Mhm.
If a con doesn't center gaming, then I am going to avoid it initially until I can be sure that I can do well with tabletop at that con.
I understand and I agree to that. I think there's only one that really doesn't kind of fit that bill, and I think that's Dragon Con, but that's become something, its own unique breed of thing,
Yes.
and people expect there to be tabletop vendors there, even if there isn't a game space.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's barely space to exist at Dragon Con.
or
Basi-
space for clothes, but yeah,
Yeah.
but like NYCC and SDCC aren't really the places you would want to go as a tabletop gaming vendor because people don't go to those cons to expect to interact with that kind of vendor.
Exactly.
So, no, I think that makes sense, and I like the phrasing around that. It's definitely a good way
Thank you.
to look at things. All right, so bonus question before we hit picks and then cut out. Have you thought about 2020 at all and what you would like to do?
I have. One thing I would really love to do is, like we just talked about, get at least one con under my belt. That's the small, like, minimum.
Mhm.
I don't know. I want, like, I haven't settled on the number of shows I want to do, but I want to do shows, get into the swing of things with that,
Mhm.
and just become more consistent in paying myself, honestly.
Yeah.
Just because right now it's been tight with the way collections have come in. I'm probably going to have to diversify a little bit, look into actually utilizing the and toys part of my name.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've been thinking of just like making, I don't know if you saw the wallet we got from that lot of cards when we were vending together.
Oh, I did, but I don't remember. Yeah.
It's just a wallet made out of Pokemon cards. I've been thinking about making stuff like that and just taking it with me to table.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Some
Just
Etsy
like-
style stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just diversifying a little bit from singles to keep myself afloat in the times when, in crunch time when I just buy a collection, you know?
Yeah. And I guess this kind of goes into that, but I should have asked before. You did mention cracking booster boxes as part of your strategy for Super. Has booster cracking just gone away?
So, it's that point in time when I cracked the boxes for Super.
Mhm.
The super rough math I did made the EV look worth it, and it was there. But since that time, that set singles have tanked, and I haven't had a chance to reevaluate for the newest set yet to see if it's something I can do.
What about the other games? Did you ever crack packs for those, or
I
is it too
did-
hard without distro?
It's really hard without distro. I did do it for Throne of Eldraine. I used my judge compensation from our local game store.
Yep.
And that got me a bunch of singles to start with.
Mhm.
Got an Oko and sold it immediately.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it is too hard without distro to crack for singles and come out ahead, especially with standard stuff.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And like I said, I'm sorry we missed that point before, but I guess for
Oh, no worries.
with the idea of a specific set of goals for 2020, booster cracking may or may not be a part of that. So
I would like to get to the point where I can have that as part of my inventory acquisition process, because it just makes keeping standard in stock for the players so much easier. Because right now it's tough because I don't have much for standard, honestly.
Yeah.
And when I do, I have to list it on TCG Player ASAP so I don't eat it.
yes, I think that's also good to know. If you don't have an active standard environment, which we don't, I don't know how often it even fires. If it's once a month now
I know
at one
both.
store.
Yeah, I know the store I used to work at, they just do draft now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like the other ones that I know do mix of draft and modern for FNMs. So I don't know anybody that actively does standard that's within like a 20-minute or half an hour.
Yeah.
So you got to drive real far from where we are to find standard, which is kind of a bummer, I guess, but for a vendor at least, because that's kind of the bread and butter. We don't have a super big legacy environment, so even churning through cards like Brainstorm is hard.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think like I don't know, it's super useful, and just like last year when we talked about the grading stuff and that market, I think this is another one of those series. It's just people need to take the time to listen to learn about what they want to do, and if they're going to pursue this full time, take the advice from somebody who's been all over this industry, from a player to working for a mega vendor to working on their own now. And
Yeah.
there's just so many things you don't think about. Like I said, that Jason and I don't even think about, because this isn't our primary gig; it's our side hustle. So bring on somebody who's doing this full time is incredible, and I want to thank you for the time you've given to us.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I
Awesome.
enjoyed this a lot.
Oh, anytime. And before we head out, you and I talked about this, and you surprised me
Yeah.
that you had a pick, and it was for Magic. So
Yeah.
you did spoil it, but not the reason. So your pick for this week on the podcast is
Possibility Storm from Dragon's Maze. And I don't know how many of you saw Andrea Mangucci's latest, I don't know if it's his latest, but he has a Pioneer video on Channel Fireball with Possibility Storm featuring adventure cards, which I thought was really had a lot of potential, because it's just like Gruul aggro with the top end being Possibility Storm into Heart's Desire, which is the 5/5 Beast Things adventure.
okay.
When you have Enter the Infinite. So just having, not because of that deck in particular, that's just what brought it to the front of my mind.
Mhm.
The
This
thing
is
is,
also an EDH card, isn't it?
yeah, and it's one printing. We did see a large spike recently
Mhm.
up to where it is now. Don't know why that was. I would imagine a little bit because of Pioneer and V Adventures already, but I think this
Yeah.
one has room to grow because of EDH demand, and also just for more things we see that like do card types in a weird way, and by that I mean adventure creatures, split cards, for more potential this has to be built around
Mhm.
and like kind of like broken.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
definitely. It's a more broken version of a card that cares about types than Tarmogoyf, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because Tarmogoyf doesn't care about splits or adventures. It just
It's
cares
more
about.
degenerate, I would say.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first time I heard about this was when people were moving through Enter the Infinite combo as cards got banned from that, and it was like Twiddle Storm at one point with Enter the Infinite, and then I heard about Possibility Storm with Enter the Infinite, but I don't think it was the Gruul aggro version yet, and I think that was in accordance with, and I brought this up on the cast, but the market price spike towards the end
Okay.
of November. I think those were the coinciding points
Gotcha.
for that.
Yeah. I do feel like we could see another spike in this if like this deck gets cracked and it
Oh,
becomes
yeah.
a real thing. Because like for games I was watching play out, like it's just this deck in particular.
Mhm.
It's just a real Gruul aggro deck. Like turn 2 Rabble Master is a good play.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then you have this other angle to attack from.
Hmm. And I think something important about Pioneer as a whole is we haven't had any super influential bannings over the last couple of weeks. For the format has finally stabilized a little bit, and we're kind of hoping that it stabilizes through Theros Beyond Death. But we're going to see some changes as pros start working on this for their upcoming Mythic Championships. So there are a
Definitely.
lot of cards that are not going to be flat, but they might go up for a little while and then take off once they start hitting 5-0s because of testing for the Mythic Championship, or even during that event. And it's going to be very important for people who want to cash in on Pioneer to stay tuned to that event and get out of things as quickly as possible in case they get banned on that Monday.
Definitely agree. Also worth noting, you can't have your your Possibility Storm OCO'd.
Yes, that is actually huge.
Yeah.
We were joking at Modern last night that one of the best strategies for Modern over the last couple of weeks has just been play mono enchantments because you can't Oko the deck that way.
Yeah.
There's no opalescence, but I'm sure there's something you can do as just mono enchantments.
Starfield of Nyx, get him.
Yeah, the combo deck. That's actually relevant to Jason's pick, but we'll get there in a moment. I want to talk about mine. So my pick is Pack Rat. This is a card that I've been watching for a little bit, and I thought it was going to take off sooner based on mono black control or mono black aggro, but there were better shells for that deck. However, it is starting to see play now in just the Golgari aggro decks. It is, if it's good now, it's going to be good later because this card is a problem. If you
Yup.
can play it on turn, when you have 5 mana, it also cannot be Oko'd, so it gets around that. It has seen Fringe Modern play in Jund decks, and this is an EDH card at a very low percentage.
I did not know that about EDH.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's oddly good, not good. It oddly playable in EDH because it's a rat, so it goes in Rat Tribal. So
Oh,
you have,
gotcha. Marinar.
Yep, or Ink Eyes as your
Yeah.
general, right? And so yeah, it makes just the rat decks better. So it works with Swarm Yard, right? That thing regenerates rats.
Yep,
Uh,
it does.
and it also works with some of the Reanimator generals, Balthor, Shieldred, cards like that. Because once you bring back one, you can just make a ton of them, and it can cause a problem.
Right.
So as long as we have an aggressive deck that relies on black, either in a devotion kind of way with Theros Beyond Death coming out, or a card they just want another resilient threat in the deck, this is a card that's just going to keep climbing. When I first started tracking this was I think under $2 on Buy List. They were like $2.25 or $2.50 last night on CK, just kind of climbing the entire way. And per the stocks graph, it's a little flat right now, but that's because we haven't had a lot of wins by Golgari. The top 8s, maybe as a 1x or 2x of deck, but if more people move on to this deck, then this card definitely floats above 5, closer towards 7 or 8, and it should be an easy out for anybody playing this format that wants to play a base .c's deck.
Yeah, and I just wanted to come back to what you said about devotion.
Mhm.
I feel like this card's got a lot of potential moving forward since we know devotion is a mechanic
Yes.
in Theros Beyond Death. So if we see anything even like remotely close to Gary,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to really pop off as far as potential Pioneer shenanigans
Yes.
go.
And they've held off, they being WotC have held off on banning Nykthos because of Theros Beyond Death.
Yeah.
So we don't know what we're going to get yet. It's a safe bet for that reason. For me at least. And this shouldn't be hard to pick up. People had these for original Theros and they didn't do a whole lot afterwards. There's no reason to just like out them immediately unless you wanted to maximize on buy list. So this should be something you should be able to find pretty easily.
Yeah.
Alright, let me bring up Jason's card. So Jason this week, Thirsty, chose Starfield Mystic as his pick for similar reasons to the others. As another card that deals with enchantments, this has immediate impact with Theros Beyond Death, and not just in Standard. We've done a lot of talking about an Enchantress deck on the cast in Pioneer, and we've done a lot of talking in one of our Discords about an Enchantress deck in Pioneer, and the number of CMC reducers, I think, is 2 or 3, and the number of Enchantresses is actually somewhere around 5 or 6, but I believe only 3 of them are enchantments themselves.
Gotcha.
So there's a good mix of cards that fuel this Pioneer Enchantress deck. The problem is right now we do not have, aside from Starfield, a high end to finish with. Starfield of Nyx is your combo engine. That's a known quantity. Starfield Mystic is not going to be doing a whole lot with this combo because it's established. It's not really going to create anything new or give it some extra velocity. What Thirsty wanted to recognize is that this actually has the possibility to affect modern and legacy Enchantress builds, because we now might have enough good Enchantresses with the spoiler of the most recent one that costs 2 and a green, which is actually really important, from Theros Beyond Death, that this could kind of change the shape of a deck like this in Modern, or possibly even a different Bogle shell within Modern. And then we're not Legacy Enchantress aficionados, but Starfield Mystic does have the ability to reduce the CMC on that and let on the enchantments played there in Legacy, and let that player kind of go off a little bit more or a little more consistently by having additional copies of a card like this. So right now when we picked it, it was at about $1.36 on retail. For market, that's now up to $181. The conversation about this card started in early fall, after Core 2020 Fallout had kind of stopped, as being an obvious call forward to Theros Beyond Death and the possibility that this was going to be a player in Standard, which is why you see a very slow upward curve on this, up until most recently when we started actually getting images of some of these enchantments. And you can see that in the stocks graph. I'll bring it up real quick because I zoomed in a little more. We have the market floating above the average. So that means people are basically buying these as soon as they're listed.
Huh.
And so we'll eventually see the average price catch up to the market request for demand.
That's really cool.
When Thirsty threw this card out in Discord, I just flat asked him, I said, do you think this is worth the pick? Do you think it has legs? And he was seeing it on some sites for close to $1, and he said at that point, there's no reason to not move in. This is a $3 to $5 card easily, as long as enchantments hold true in Standard, and if anything happens in Pioneer, who knows?
Right.
This card is in print right now, but Core 20 was not received very well. It is now being overshadowed by Eldraine, and we know that Theros and Ikoria are going to be just as powerful as Eldraine, if not more, because they were all, from WotC, they were all developed at the same time at about the same power level.
Huh.
So there's going to be little reason to go back and try and open Core 20 for value when you can stay current on Standard and open those packs for value. So this is a card whose population might have peaked, if it's not going to be in any of the specialty stuff that we see.
Right. And I will say that it does combo nicely with my pick.
It does. It's reducing Possibility Storm from 3 and 2 red to 2 and 2 red. Yeah.
Yeah.
It opens up a lot of shenanigans for sure. So Once he gave me his reasoning, I was able to get behind the pick a little more. I thought it was defensible when the card was sub $1, but I wasn't sure about over $1. So I'm glad he gave me some solid reasoning for this thing. And it's nice that all of our picks kind of align in the Pioneer world where we're just teetering on the edge of everything going.
Yeah.
Like we've been holding, and this format is either going to go or not. And I think we're all kind of banking on it going. Historic's going to get tossed to the side, and we're just going to be mono Pioneer for financing right for the next good number of months.
Has Historic impacted prices on anything you've noticed? Because I would imagine that it's mostly just online arena playing it.
That's it, really. I honestly forgot that the format was a thing until I saw a tweet by Jeff Hoogland go by talking about how Historic was technically gate kept behind like some number of clicks on arena. You had to like dig to find the format.
Yeah, it was like for a while you had to just enter the play random person queue with a Historic deck, and then it would match you up with someone else with a Historic deck.
Yep.
But they didn't tell you that specifically. I found out about it from a tweet from someone from Noxious.
Okay.
And I was like, I didn't even know you could play Historic yet.
Yeah.
But now we do have ranked Historic, and I think that's it. I don't think we have events on Arena yet, but we do have the option to play Historic traditional ranked.
Yeah.
Which is fun, but I don't see it being a mover and shaker as far as prices go.
Yeah. The only information I have about Historic outside of Arena is anecdotal from modern players talking about the advent of Pioneer as a playable format before Historic was, and how laughable that was, and why anybody would play Historic over Pioneer in paper.
Yeah, I don't see it translating to paper, honestly, because just for that reason.
Yeah. You have your old standard cards, you could still play them in Pioneer. You don't need to worry about Historic. And that was our concern originally before the announcement of Pioneer, was that people just wouldn't care because you could play all those cards in Modern too. But
I mean, hey, if Historic does take off in paper, I've got a ton of Hidetsugu second rights, so I'm ready to go.
Oh yeah, I forgot they just added that to the format.
Yeah.
Oh man. No, but I think that covers it for the end of this cast.
Awesome.
If there's anything more you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that covers it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem.
This is great.
Oh yeah, and we thank you for coming on and giving us some of your time. So, for us over here, we are at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter and Patreon. We have decided what we are going to do for our giveaways, and we will be announcing that soon. Though we will have one kind of holdover, quote unquote, giveaway from 2019, which we will be announcing. So if you're not a patron yet, please do so, because it's going to be a pretty decent giveaway for an end of year. I personally am at HaltIamReptar on Twitter, and you can be found on Twitter at
Miss_play__.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye.